He lay on a gurney, and the thing about it was that man never looked at us about one time. Not one single time.
He wasn't sorry.
And he wasn't sorry either. So we tried our best, you know. And I understand that. If you're not sorry what you done,
It was a challenge.
and you know, that's how you're gonna act. You know, we got dogs, and we know exactly whenever they do something wrong, they bow down too, don't even look at us, you know. And I compare it to that. I'm sorry, but I do.
Breaking news at 10. The family of a Colbert County woman stabbed to death repeatedly more than 3 decades ago, breathing a sigh of relief tonight. One of Elizabeth Sennett's sons reacting just moments ago to the execution of one of her killers. I'm Nikhil Williams.
And I'm Dan Schaefer. Kenneth Smith was put to death by a never-before-used method in the United States, nitrogen hypoxia. Isabel Rosales is outside of Holman Correctional Facility where that execution was carried out.
Isabel, what can you tell us about this controversial sentence the state carried out tonight?
Hey, Dan and Nikhil, good evening to you. This is the first new method of an execution since 1982. That is when lethal injection was first introduced. Now, according to media observers that were in the room, they witnessed this execution. Kenneth Smith's last words were about this brand new method of execution that would take his life tonight. And those words were in part, quote, "Tonight, Alabama causes humanity to take a step backwards." Now, following that press conference, that execution, there was a press conference with those media observers, and they say that Smith appeared conscious for several minutes. For 2 minutes, he shook on the gurney, and then it was followed by several minutes of deep breathing, and then his breathing slowed down. Now, the Alabama Department of Corrections Commissioner John Hamm was also present at that press conference. He was asked about that shaking, especially since the state said that with nitrogen gas, they would become unconscious within seconds. And he said that this was, quote, "nothing out of the ordinary. That is what they expected from a nitrogen hypoxia execution." Now, I did also speak with the spiritual advisor of Kenneth Smith, Reverend Jeff Hood, and he described it as absolute torture, not painless, as the state said that it would be. I also spoke earlier with Mike and Chuck Sennett, the sons of Elizabeth Sennett, the victim there. They said that they have been waiting 35 years for justice and that this is a debt repaid. They also are concerned that their mother, her legacy, her memory will be overshadowed by what is now the United States' first execution via nitrogen gas. They want people to remember their mother as a, quote, "simple preacher's wife raised in the country." Guys.
Isabel, talk to us about what the reaction of the onlookers was like. Smith's family members, the family members of the victim. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we didn't hear that in the press conference from the media observers, but I did hear a take from Reverend Jeff Hood, who says that he heard an audible gasp from the witnesses as this was undergoing. And he also saw signs of nervousness from the execution team that were inside of that execution chamber. Obviously, nerves, he says, from doing this never before done execution method, nitrogen gas. Guys.
Isabel, a lot was made of this new untested method of execution. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall called it effective and humane. Talk a little bit more about what was going on during that method. What was Smith's reaction? You said he was shaking for a couple of minutes. I saw online that he convulsed for 2 minutes.
Right, and the Reverend said that his face turned colors. He described it as shaking, as fighting up against the gurney, up against the mask that was pressed very tightly against him. He also saw, he claims, spit within the mask as well. He would have been the one closest to Smith versus some of the observers that were in a separate room. Obviously, they had that looking glass to witness this execution in person. Alabama is one of 3 states, alongside Oklahoma and Mississippi, that have approved the use of nitrogen gas for death sentences. And now Alabama is the first to use it. Critics have concerns here that this has now opened the door for other states to now use nitrogen gas, especially as so many states since 2009 have struggled to get a hold of the drugs necessary for lethal injections. Pharmaceutical companies refusing around 2009 to sell those drugs to prisons. So many states facing that struggle have either turned to drug cocktails with success and failures, and also alternative execution methods like firing squad. That has come back in some states. And now, as we're seeing with Alabama, nitrogen gas. Guys.
As you mentioned, Alabama is the first state to do this. Now it's the poster child, right, for this method of execution. So what happens now in the process?
Right, we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. I know that there's at least one other state, Louisiana, that is curious over whether to explore this method of nitrogen gas. Now we've heard from proponents of this, including the state of Alabama, that death by nitrogen hypoxia is painless, that a prisoner quickly loses consciousness, and then death comes within minutes. Here in Alabama, the governor, Kay Ivey, says that the method has been thoroughly vetted. So we're just going to have to see if this now catches on to other states, especially, as I mentioned, with that shortage of lethal injection drugs.
Isabel Rosales reporting live for us outside Holman Correctional Facility tonight. Thank you.
Tonight, we also heard from State Attorney General Steve Marshall following the execution. He plans to hold a news conference tomorrow morning in Montgomery. Tonight, he released a statement, though, that reads in part, "Justice has been served." Tonight, Kenneth Smith was put to death for the heinous act he committed over 35 years ago. This is an important night for Elizabeth Sennett's family, for justice, and for the rule of law in our great nation.